Alright, brothers, we gotta talk about something, right? Like, there's been a lot of talk around the DBD community as of lately when it comes to how fun the game is, how the developers are balancing the game, etc. There was especially a lot of talk when it came to the Game Awards and behavior like asking people to nominate them for Labor of Love. Now, while this video isn't exactly about that, we will talk about that. This is about DBD and the stale state of playing Survivor. Because, oh my god, it's boring as hell. Dead by Daylight has so many DLC chapters, I've lost count, right? Like, we're on chapter 34, 35, something like that. There's an endless amount of content to play in this game, it feels like. There's so many different killers, there's so many different survivors to play as, there's so many different perks to use, different builds, add-on combinations, items with those add-ons that completely change the way that the game plays. And I would argue for Killer that the game stays fun for a very long time. The game for Killer stays fun up until the point where you can't handle the toxicity of the way the game is played at a higher level. The first, 500 hours for Killer, it's some of the best fun, some of the most fun you'll have in a video game. In my opinion, it's so different, it's so unique, there's so many different killers. You want to play as Michael Myers? Bro, do it. You want to play as Freddy Krueger? Bro, go for it. You want to play as Ghostface? Holy shit, dude, go ahead. Vecna from D&D, let's go, right? And on top of that, there's so many different perks to make those killers play in different ways. But to a certain extent, at a certain point, it becomes super unfun because you're forced into using the same few perks over and over again. You're going up against super sweaty survivors, whether they're solo queue, most of the time they're survive with friends. It's super frustrating. But those first few hundred hours for Killer are something else, man. Survivor, on the other hand, all of this is obviously subjective. There are some people who have 10,000 hours on this game, they only play Survivor, and they will still drop to their knees with their pants around their ankles for some reason, and tell you that Survivor is the most fun they've ever had on a video game ever, and they're still having fun 10,000 hours later. Which, fair enough, but that's crazy to me. And one of the main reasons is because you run out of stuff to do, right? Like, now don't get me wrong, Survivor has just as many, actually I think more. I think we watched a video, we reacted to a video not that long ago, the new player experience for Dead by Daylight, that there's like 18 million different, I don't know if that was a statistic pulled out of his ass, I haven't fact checked it, but like 18 million different Survivor perk combinations in the game, and something like 9 million for Killer, right? That's a lot. It's a lot of different perk combinations. Now, you have to keep in mind, like, half of those are not useful. A lot of them don't work together, and when you get to a higher level, you're using about the same 4 to 8, maybe 12 perks over and over again. But I would argue that Survivor, even at a lower level, where it stays fun for Killer, I would argue that Survivor is fun for half of that time. Now, half of 500 hours is still obviously 250 hours. That's your money's worth out of a $30 game, right? Like, that's your money's worth. But DBD is an ongoing, basically live service game at this point, right? You're meant to have thousands of hours of fun with it. And I've had 1,200 hours of fun with the game. But Survivor dips off for me. Again, not everybody's going to agree. And the reason that is because there is nothing else to do besides do generators, loop the killer, or cleanse totems, bro. Like, that's all. That's it. That's the gameplay loop, right? You are holding mouse 1 on a generator, you are running a killer, or you are doing the meaningless, for the most part, outside of some perks, the meaningless side objective in the game, which is doing totems, bro. It's so boring. It gets so old. Now, looping the killer when you get good at playing Killer, it can be a lot of fun, right? Like, you can have a couple hundred hours of enjoyment looping the killer, but what about when that gets old? When you've looped all the jimmies, when you've ran them around 100,000 times, you can loop a killer for 2.5 minutes, you can win a game all on your own just by looping the killer. What happens after that, bro? You're doing generators, you're doing totems. It's boring. And I think that's a big problem for Dead by Daylight. Maybe not in the sense of, like, it's not going to kill the game. I've talked about this before. There's so many people out there that are like, Dead by Daylight is dying. It is dying. It's losing players. I made a video about it losing players, losing hype. It's not dying. It's not going anywhere. As long as it keeps getting licensed chapters and the licenses that are in the game stay in the game, this is one of the only games to where you can play as Michael Myers. The game's not going anywhere. But it's losing a lot of legacy players. There are only so many thousands of hours you can put into the game as Killer, and there's only so many thousands of hours you can put into the game as Survivor before it gets old. And you might argue, well, you got your money's worth. Sure, I guess, sure, but at the same time, shouldn't they be going out of their way? Shouldn't they be doing something to improve the gameplay that we've had, the same gameplay for the past 7 years? Almost 8 years, or is it almost 7 years? I don't remember. They should be doing something to refreshing something. Make the game more fun, especially for Survivor. Survivor, I will go ahead and throw it in here. I'm a Killer main, and that's only because I get so bored playing Survivor, holding mouse 1 on a generator. I am a Killer main, as most people would declare. And I will still sit here and tell you that Survivor is the harder role to play outside of playing with like a 3 or a 4-man Survive with friends. Even a duo is hard. Solo queue Survivor is one of the most unenjoyable experiences you can have in a video game when you hit a certain point of MMR. It's just not fun. 9 times out of 10, your teammates are chewing on twigs and squatting in corners, and the killer is a fucking Terminator, right? Like, you can't get away from him. And just to add on top of that horrible experience, and I would argue it's like that for duos somewhat, depending on how good you and your duo are, it's a miserable experience. And what do you have to look forward to for playing as a solo survivor or a duo, right? You have the same gameplay that we've had for the past 7 years. But I've talked about the problem, all right? So what can they do? I think these 2v8 game modes, Chaos Shuffle, these different game modes are a step in the right direction for the game overall, right? But that doesn't just affect Survivor. That affects Killer and Survivor. There's 2 killers in 2v8. There's 8 survivors there. It changes the game in such a dynamic way because it's a new game mode entirely. What can they do to their base game mode to make it more fun, refreshing it, liven it up for the people who have been playing the game for 7 years, who have 12 to 10,000 hours on the game, right? I have 1,200 hours, all right? And you might say, well, you haven't even played the game enough. I have a family, bro, okay? I can't put 10,000 hours in the game, but even 1,200 hours into the game, it's fucking boring, okay? But what can they do? More objectives, right? I think it's been talked to death. Like, this video has been made 1,000 times. It's been talked to death, but more objectives, right? And it doesn't have to be that in-depth when it comes to the objectives. We don't have to add, like, repair the house, fix the truck, and lube the cow's butthole to escape through the doors. No, it's simple things. Gather gas for the generator. Find the spark plugs for the generator. Find something for the generator. Find the handle for the door to escape through. It doesn't have to be big, entirely recoding the entire game type things to make it more interactive. Survivors just need more things to do than hanging out on generators. And you might say, well, that will make the games longer. That will make it more killer-sided because survivors will have more to do, and that will mean the killer has more time to find the survivors. I do think another 5 minutes should be added on to the game time, but I also think that it shouldn't lean the game to killer. The game's already killer-sided. I'll go ahead and say that. As a killer main, the game's killer-sided. Like, no shit. We 3 to 4K most of the time, and we just get bent when we get a 2K. It sucks. I get really mad when I get teabagged at the exit gates, and then I go on Twitter and say, the game is survivor-sided, fuck you, BHVR, right? But realistically, all they need to do is add these new objectives and then cut the time to complete a generator in half. It's not that difficult, right? It's not game-changing or anything. They add these snowmen events in where they have new things in the game that survivors and killers can do. They put the 2v8 game mode in. All they have to do is spark plugs for the generator, gas for the generator, new models, new objects to collide with on the map, a handle for the door, you know, and maybe a couple of other little things that require at least 4 to 6 different parts to maybe in total fix the generator and fix the door to actually get out. I think you cut the objective time in half for repairing the generator and maybe shave 25% off of opening the door for finding the door handle, and then there you go. You've freshened up Dead by Daylight for survivors, for legacy survivors, for people who have been playing the game for hours and hours and hours, and you've also added a new objective for the killer by doing so, right? Like, accidentally. whatever you do for the survivors, you're doing for the killer, but this is mostly for survivors, right? But you have new things to look out for as the killer. You have new things to keep an eye on. Maybe you can see the aura of the different objectives the survivors have to gather, just like you can with gens. Like, you know where the door handle is, you know where the gas is, and there's like maybe 3 or 4 different gas spots on the map. Maybe there's 2 or 3 different spots they can get the spark plugs, and those are just things you have to be aware of when it comes to playing killer. And I think that just adds a whole new dynamic into Dead by Daylight and makes it so much more enjoyable for both sides, because we've been doing the same shit for like 7 years now. Now, granted, it has got better. It's definitely gotten more enjoyable to play the game with all the balancing and everything else that they've put into the game, but at the same time, we are doing the same shit. Especially for survivors. Killers, we get new killers, bro. We get different powers. We get perks that completely change the way we play. Survivors are just playing the same damn survivor. And another way, I think, just to throw this in here at the end, having survivors have like their own special perk. Like, so they have a built-in perk for that survivor on top of the other 4 perks you have. And I think that kind of balances it out with killers, right? Like, killers have their own power, and then they have 4 perks. If survivors had, each survivor, even licensed survivors, had their own, like, little perk that was built into the character, that would give us a reason to play different characters outside of it just being like, I want to play fucking Nicolas Cage. I want to play Ellen Ripley from Alien, bro. Like, I think it would give us more of a reason to play different survivors, you know, instead of just seeing 35,000 Fang Mings running around, right? But I think that's a good idea, too. And it's simple things like this. Like, how hard would it be to code in a base perk for every survivor? It would probably take a little bit, but it wouldn't be like astronomically difficult, changing the entire way that the game functions as far as code goes. Simple things. Simple things lead to big ripples, which lead to big excitement. I don't know. I was going somewhere with that and kind of lost it. But anyways, that's all I'm saying. I want Survivor to be fun again. I want to be able to play Survivor and actually enjoy myself instead of just losing my absolute fucking mind holding mouse 1 on a generator. I want you guys to let me know what you think in the comments down below, though. I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say. Let me know, like, what ideas do you have? Do you have some ideas, different objectives they could throw in there? Give me some base Survivor perks that you would add for your favorite survivors, right? Like, I don't know, give Ellen Ripley a fucking flamethrower. Don't do that. That's a joke. Anyway, but yeah, thanks for watching, dudes. Catch me live on Twitch every other day. Link is in the description down below. That's where most of my reaction videos come from. I do a lot of my discussion videos beforehand, but a lot of my live reaction videos come from Twitch. We play Dead by Daylight. We play fighting games, Tekken, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat. So check me out over there. Link is in the description down below. We also have a Discord. Check that out. Link is in the description down below as well. And I have a Twitter where I post dumb shit. Check that out if you want to as well. But thanks for watching, dudes. See you next time.